gosh, just took out the car next to me. Okay, guys, today is equipment vlog number 2. Coming at you live. I'm not going to say coming at you live every time we start one of these videos, but because quite frankly, that was the second time I did it, and it's already annoying the crap out of me. But let's talk about what we have on the agenda today. We have 3 things to test today, which I am, I'm excited about. I'm always excited about this stuff. This is why I started this whole page, TEJ on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. This is why I do it. I live for this. But let's talk about what we got today. We have 3 things, and honestly, we have a lot more throughout the course of the week, but today we're focused on 3 things. All right? First and foremost, we have Nippon Regio Formula MB Plus in the driver, Titleist TSR3. Now, we've got 8, 9, and 10 degree heads. You guys have heard me talk about in the last video how I'm trying to build a draw driver. Well, in between the time the last video was filmed and this video is being filmed, I'm not sure that you can consistently turn over a modern driver. I don't know if it's possible. Just because of how they're made, the CGs, the spin rates, the way you're hitting up on the golf ball, how your path moves as you hit up on the golf ball, like lots of different things. I am getting to this realization that I don't think you can consistently draw a modern driver. Doesn't mean you can't draw it, right? If I want to turn a driver over, I can do it. But when we're talking about consistently doing it, that's where it gets a little bit difficult. So the reason I bring this point up is because I'm starting to come to this realization that maybe off the tee, the smartest move is to play a little bit of a push cut. So, say with my irons, I'm kind of swinging from in to out. That's fine. We can keep doing that with the driver. But just because of the face angles and the way you're hitting up on the golf ball, that in to out feel is going to produce more of a consistent push cut than trying to get it to actually consistently turn over. So now I'm starting to think, okay, maybe the move is to play like an 8 degree head, hit up on it, try to get as much distance out of it as possible. That way we have something that goes long. Then in the 3-wood, we're gonna have something that has a little bit more loft, is a little bit easier to turn over, and that one is more of our straight club. This is something that is gonna, we can really, really rely on getting in play when we need to. So in terms of the driver, Nippon Regio Formula MB Plus 65X, it is untipped because, that's something I do with all my drivers when we're testing shafts, right? At some point, I don't have 4 MB Pluses, they're expensive. So what I like to do is I like to build it untipped, make it, an inch longer than I would normally play it at, maybe even an inch and a half. And then choke down, hit it, see what I think about it. And then if I think it needs to be tipped, I've given myself enough room to tip it. If I make it 45 inches and then I decide, I want to tip it, when I go to tip it, it's going to come out too short in terms of length. So something to think about if you ever build a driver to test. But yeah, thinking 8 degree, 9 degree heads with that shaft, and we'll kind of see how it goes. Next thing is going to be Nippon Modus Tour 115X. Now, you heard me talk about in the last video why I'm thinking the 115 is going to be a good option. Same sort of mid-soft, stiff tip profile, but a little bit maybe better feeling. Something I do that's maybe a little bit odd is, in my irons, I tend to prefer a little bit lighter shafts, so I don't feel like I need to overswing them to get them to go the right distance. I can just make a good solid golf swing, and they kind of produce the results I want. Sometimes when they get too heavy, I try to overswing them. And then in my drivers and fairways, I actually like to go heavier because of sort of the opposite reason. When they're too light in my drivers and 3-woods, I almost try to overpower them because they are so light, and giving me a little bit more heft in the driver and 3-wood kind of helps me stay a little bit more controlled in terms of my golf swing. So The MB Plus is 70 grams, even though it's a 65X. So, you know, I think that's gonna be in a solid weight range for us. Usually I like to be around 70 to 78 grams in terms of the driver. And then, but as far as the irons, the Modus 115X is around 120 grams. I believe is 119 and a half to be exact. So right around 120, good spot to be. We are testing that in a 4-iron. So something I like to do that's maybe a little bit odd, but, you know, just something I like to do is when I'm testing iron shafts specifically, I'll actually go on 2 ends of the spectrum and test my iron shafts as opposed to just testing a 7-iron. So what a lot of people will do when you go and get fit, you just hit a 7-iron, you just hit a 6-iron, and that's all great and dandy. But sometimes you get down into the wedges and that shaft doesn't quite feel the same. And then sometimes you get down into the 4-iron and that shaft doesn't quite feel the same. So what I really like to do is I like to test a 4-iron in a pitching wedge. And then I kind of have an idea, okay, if it works in the 4-iron and it works in the pitching wedge, I have a pretty good idea that it's gonna work in the 7-iron. You know, it might not, but usually if you can split both ends, that middle ground is gonna be just fine. So that's what I like to do. Now, to be completely transparent and fair, I haven't built this up in the pitching wedge. For today's testing, I really just wanted to hit it in the 4-iron to see if I like that weight, to see if that's gonna kind of give me the feel I want in my golf swing. So if it is, then we'll build up a pitching wedge and we'll try them both and kind of make sure we like it. But for today, we are just trying the Modus 115X in a 4-iron. And then the last thing we have on the agenda today is going to be the Modus 125X in a 7-iron. Now, I'm almost breaking my own rule that I just talked about in terms of testing on the different ends of the spectrum, and if you watched my last video, you heard me talk about the fact that I thought that the Modus 125 is a little bit boardy due to the heat treatment, due to the thicker wall thickness in the butt end of the shaft. So it's not a shaft that I love in terms of comparing it to the X100. Like if I had to pick one right this second, I would probably pick the X100. But the truth is, I had the shaft sitting in my garage. I had a set of pulls sitting in my garage. They were already cut to the right length. They were already gripped. And so I just said, screw it. You know what? It's already here. I'm trying this profile. Why don't we just build it up at a 7-iron and see how it goes? So that is something else we're going to be trying today. And, you know, that's kind of what we have on the agenda. I'm excited. I'm ready to get out there and hit these. So, yeah, let's head out to the golf course and get to testing. Well, guys, I know I said we were heading to the golf course, and we are heading to the golf course, but I had to stop at the golf store to pick up some grips for the club so I could, you know, actually grip them and hit them. And you heard me talk a second ago about how I am not really sure that modern day drivers are meant to draw. But after having kind of come to that conclusion over the last few days, I also thought to myself, what about a mini driver? Maybe the CG's in a better position, a little bit more loft, might be a little bit easier to turn over. Additionally, since they're not so deep, you don't have to hit so far up on them. And so I was thinking, you know what, maybe a mini driver could work. Well, I happened to pawn upon something at PGA Tour Superstore that we're going to be experimenting with, not in today's video, but in the next video after this one. So why don't I just go ahead and show you. We have a tailor-made Aero Burner mini driver, 12 degrees of loft. I don't know if you can really see that. I'll put a video up that's a little bit better. This thing is beat to crap, absolutely destroyed, but I started hitting it at the store and it was like stripe draw, stripe draw, stripe draw, incredible. And what I like about this over the new Burner mini driver is the head is a little bit smaller. I still think with the Burner mini, you know, the 300 mini, I have a 300 mini, and to me, the head is just still slightly too big. It's still a little bit hard to turn over. This one I am really liking. I'm very curious about. So just a little bit of a preview for tomorrow's video, or I guess whenever the next video comes out after this one. But yeah, I am pretty excited about that. But nonetheless, let's get these gripped head out to the golf course. All right, guys, so we made it out to the golf course, and I think the way we're going to start this testing is with the Modus 125X 7-iron, then we'll move into the 4-iron, then we'll move into the driver. Shouldn't be too long of a test here. I kind of have a feeling that, you know, this might not work, and then I think the 4-iron, just by waggling it earlier, I liked. The driver, although it's untipped, I kind of felt like it seemed like it would be decent, just by waggling it. So maybe I'm crazy. Let's get into it. Let's get started. And we'll start with the 7-iron. We have wind off the left. So for a drawer, I guess it should go a little bit straighter. A little toey there. Actually, doesn't feel like as boardy as I remember the Modus 125 feeling. This jacket's a little tight to swing it, I'm not gonna lie. Chunk that. Huh. I mean, not overly great golf shots to start, but to be honest with you guys, actually don't really mind. The shaft doesn't really feel as stiff as I remember. A little low heel. Actually don't mind this. I guess it really depends how I feel like that 115 performs in the 4-iron, because if that feels too light, I don't mind this. Flight's good. I definitely feel stiff, you know, as we kind of expected. But it's not as boardy as I kind of remember and kind of have sold you guys on. A little bit of an overdraw. Not bad though. Let's go try to move a couple. Maybe we'll try to hit like more of a low cut here. Solid. I mean, it stays with you. That's for sure. And we'll go high draw now. I mean, this thing's good. I'm centering it. Okay, well, this stuff never ends, does it? Now I'm like thinking, man, maybe I like these. But the good news is I do have a full set, so I don't really have to go buy anything if I decide to go with them. But man, this really feels solid. I mean, it's definitely stiff. Like the feel, because I had S300s in here originally, and to me, those definitely felt nicer. Just through the impact spot, they're a little softer. But like, I don't really have an issue with the feel of this Modus 125. It just feels nice. I mean, to me, the real difference is it just feels firmer through the impact spot. Go for a low draw here. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can do a lot with it. Okay, well, oh man, this stuff never ends, does it? All right, now on to the 4-iron. This is the club I would say I'm most excited about for today. So, Modus Tour 115X, Cobra CB 4-iron. Let's go. Let's just get it. Get after it. Definitely softer. Not a great shot, but that's, I mean, at the end of the day, that's on me. that was good. I mean, the thing that really differs between this and the 125 is ease of swing. Like, through the impact spot, these feel softer. They just feel smoother, if you will. And that's how I would describe it. Those don't feel as bad as I remember them feeling in terms of like stiffness and boardiness, but there is a clear-cut difference between the Modus 115 and the Modus 125. I mean, to me, it's very clear. But let's keep going with this. I mean, I really like how this feels. Just very easy to swing. You know, for me, the big thing is in tournaments, I notice that I tend to overpower stuff once I get into a tournament. You know, I notice a lot of times when I'm fitting myself or I'm working with stuff, feels great on the range, even feels good on the golf course, and then as soon as I get to a tournament, that softness kind of comes out and I feel like I'm overpowering the shaft. So, you know, it's tough to get a gauge on it when you're just hitting on the range sometimes because, you know, a lot of times when you're hitting on the range, you're not swinging the same way you would in a tournament. At least that's what I notice for myself. But nonetheless, I mean, these feel a little bit smoother. I mean, it's pretty obvious why. Like, they're softer, they're lighter, they're gonna feel smoother, right? But, you know, these to me, just in terms of hitting on the range, I would pick these over those. 115s over the 125s, just because of how smooth they are. The real question here is, when I get to a tournament, are they gonna be too loose, too soft? That's the question, and that's the hard one to answer. You know, sometimes that's the one where you build up a set and you get out to a tournament and they're not what you remember. You don't like them as much as you thought. Maybe you don't hit the ball as well because of that reason, right? So I guess that's kind of what we're chasing and trying to figure out here. But, you know, that's why for me, you know, liking this kind of right off the bat, what I would have to do is put it in a pitching wedge and a 7-iron, go out and play around a golf where maybe I'm keeping score or I'm really focused on, you know, kind of keeping my adrenaline up to kind of test and see how that stiffness is holding up. So, but we'll hit a few more shots with the 4-iron. Low on the face, hung it out to the right. Toe job. I don't know, guys. I kind of think the 125 is gotta be a little bit better. I mean, that's the thing I think a 125 just kind of can't do. Is just hit that high, beautiful, tight draw, just because it's so stiff. But I don't know, there's a part of me that just thinks that this feels too soft. We'll go low cut. Low cut. Pretty easy. We'll go low draw. That was a horrible strike. I mean, it was a low draw, but I mean, yeah. That's better. More like a low mini hook. We'll go high cut. I mean, it just kind of feels soft, if we're being honest. Toe-y high cut. We'll go high draw. I mean, I can do a lot with it. I just feel like I'm overpowering it. So, yeah, I don't know. So, all right. I mean, good testing. Kind of interesting to to hear my thoughts. I guess, you know, when I speak them out loud, you know, I really start to realize certain things that maybe I don't think about, especially the tournament thing I mentioned where, you know, when I get into tournaments, I'm a little bit more aggressive. So, you know, maybe it's a little bit better to play something a little bit stiffer. Even though maybe that 115 feels better in practice. But nonetheless, let's move on to the driver. Grab some tees here. All right, into the driver. We have the Nippon Regio Formula MB Plus, untipped, 46.5 inches, so actually longer than the USGA legal limit. But the reason for that is so I give myself some room to tip the shaft in case I need to. TSR3, 9-degree head. We're going to choke down. We've got our trusty painter's tape on the shaft, so we know where to choke down to. So that's 45 inches below this painter's tape. And we'll just go ahead and hit this. All right, so that is a heel pull nasty shot. The only issue when you go this long, you know, for the tipping purposes, is it does get very long. It does get like excessively long feeling. Even if you choke down, it's just like, dang, this thing is weird. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do. You know, we're not all billionaires out here. Nonetheless. Now, what's interesting about this is if you look at it on EI, it is softer than, say, you know, your Ventus Blue 6X, just by looking at the graph. When you look at torque and some of the other things, it doesn't feel that soft. It really doesn't. So even though this tip section is decently soft, it really doesn't feel like a noodle. It feels relatively stiff, which is nice. But yeah, kind of getting back to that theory I was talking about earlier, in terms of the push cut off the tee, you know, I think that that's probably going to be, you know, if I play a driver, probably going to be 8 to 9 degrees, and I'm just going to try to hit a push cut. And I think the real thing about drivers is, you know, you can kind of do one of two things. You could either build one to just go, you know, effing forever, as far as you could possibly hit it, or you can build one more for accuracy, or you can kind of try to split the difference between the two. So, you know, that's the question that, you know, a player has to answer and kind of figure out. I think there is a balance, but I think, you know, to an extent at some point, maybe the goal is to just hit it as far as possible. And then on those tight courses, you know, maybe you put the mini driver in instead, you know, if you could find one that works, you know, or you just 3-wood off the tee. Because, you know, you feel like you have a reliable one. If you've built a reliable 3-wood, you know, then you just hit that. But so far the driver feels good. You know, for me it's just kind of in to out, push cut. You know, although I'm kind of pulling it. But to me that's just because of the length, if we're being honest. I know I'm choking down on it, but this thing still feels like a frickin' fishing pole. But then you hit one like that and you're like, oh, okay. This thing's pretty darn good. I mean, so far, guys, I like this. If I can get it to the right length, I'm going to also have to check, you know, the launch and spin numbers, ball speed, you know, make sure this thing isn't, you know, spinning 3,200 or, you know, something ridiculous. Because if we're going to hit that push cut, we want that thing to not have so much spin on it, you know, just kind of get it to go. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling right now. We'll hit a couple more with the driver, you know, just to kind of confirm, but I really do like it. It feels very solid. Now, it really doesn't feel soft at all, even though on EI it does look soft when you look at the graph. So for me, this is just a little push cut. And again, I'm pulling it. I mean, that's going to be more due to lie angle purposes and the fact that this thing's so long, even though I'm choking up on it. I know I keep mentioning that, but I mean, either that or I'm just pulling it because I suck. I'm not that good, you know. But sometimes as players, we don't like to talk about that, do we? Here we go. A couple more with the driver. I mean, that is really solid. It's going a decently long way, too. I mean, the wind isn't, like, into us. I guess maybe it is a little. Maybe it's cornering. It does feel a little bit into us. I mean, it's got me flying 270 into the wind. Nothing wrong with that. All right, one more here. There it is. That's the miss I want to see. If we're going to miss with a push cut, it should just be a little bit bigger of a push cut. So, you know, that's our testing for today. Pretty short, not too much to it. All right, guys, so let's kind of talk about how today went and our conclusions on things. And yeah, so starting with the Modus 125. Definitely stiff, definitely decently heavy, but you know what? It doesn't feel nearly as, you know, boardy or stiff as I kind of remember it feeling. You know, definitely stiff. I mean, like, no doubt, but it's not, it doesn't feel as telephone pulley as I remember, if that makes sense. So, you know, after hitting that for a few shots, you know, I actually kind of felt like I liked it. And then as we moved into the Modus 115, you know, to me, that feels just super smooth, very easy to swing, very fun to swing, very soft through the impact zone. But, you know, the more I hit it and the more I spent time with it, you know, and even off camera when I kept hitting it more and more and more, I just realized that to me it's too soft. And I think that the big thing for me is, you know, stuff will feel great on the range and very smooth, very fun to swing, very easy to swing. But when I get into tournaments and I start to make those more aggressive swings and I start to kind of, you know, put force into the shaft, you know, it just doesn't quite hold up for me. And so on the range, as I started to get more and more warmed up and hit more and more shots, especially off camera, and I noticed that there were shots where I would bottom out a little early, or I would hit a little bit off the toe, or I would hang it out to the right, just because to me it's just a little bit too soft. And so I love the shaft. I think it's really good. In terms of a mid-soft profile in that 120 gram range, maybe for somebody who doesn't swing it quite as fast, or maybe isn't quite as aggressive, maybe just doesn't, you know, play tournament golf and it doesn't really, you know, get into that more aggressive mode, I think that's a fantastic shaft. I really do. But for me, you know, just kind of knowing my tendencies in tournaments, I don't think it's quite what I want. So the conclusion I've come to in terms of the iron shafts, I think is going to be Modus 125. And, you know, what I might do is I might soft step it, because, you know, my theory there is, because it definitely, like, if you compare it to an X1, to me it feels, you know, a little bit more boardy. So, you know, the theory in soft stepping it would be, you know, to keep the same profile. Yeah, I would lighten it by, I think, you know, when you soft step, I think it's 1.5 grams. But I'm not too worried about that. But more so maybe just take out a little bit of that boardy feeling, make it feel a little bit softer, a little bit longer tip section. Could be the move. And then, so you got Modus 125 soft step. Then you've got DG 120. Now, you might be thinking, well, if you didn't like the Modus 115, you're probably not going to like the DG 120. And you're not wrong. But the thing about the DG 120 is it has the same tip stiffness as an X100. The real difference in the DG120 is it kind of drops off in the butt. So the butt's a little bit softer, but when you get into that tip section, it retains a lot of the stiffness of the original X100 in a lighter weight. So, I mean, in an ideal world, if I could play a 120 gram shaft that holds up stiffness-wise, that would be fantastic. So that could be the move. Something that's far out there, and then I'm not really seriously considering is like an MMT, because it's very, DG X100 profile, but stiffer tip, and you can get it in lighter weights. But when you get into the 105 TX MMT, it is like psycho stiff. I mean, that thing is like a freaking telephone pole in the tip section. It's insane. And then you got the fact that it's graphite on top of it. So, I don't know if that's a great idea to get into that quite yet. I think graphite iron shafts are fantastic options for the right player, but I do think we have a little bit more to go in terms of timing, in the next maybe 5 or 10 years to really get them to feel a little bit more steel-like, and to really get the profiles ironed out exactly how, players want them. But I think the MMT, could be an option nonetheless. And then, if you got the X100 130 gram model, that could also be an option. So that's really, I think, the 4 I've narrowed it down to at the current moment. And, we'll just kind of go from there. But I think that's where we're at. We got to get some more shafts in, some iron shafts, and kind of try them in the foreign pitching wedge like I've talked about, and then, we'll go from there. But that's kind of my thoughts at the current moment. And then the MB Plus, that thing is really good. I'm very surprised at how much I like it. Like I mentioned earlier, when you look at it on EI, softer tip section, but I think because of the torque and, I don't know if it's the material they use or something, it does not feel overly soft. It really doesn't, which is nice to see. So that could be a really good option. And, I'm liking it. I think the move for me would be to really get a 7TX UB or 7X UB and really start there. And then, mess with the MB Plus off of that. The other thing that we got to figure out with the MB Plus is, do I want to tip it? It didn't really feel soft today, but as I kind of keep mentioning to you guys, these are the things that are tough questions to answer, because unless I'm playing, unless I go out and play a tournament tomorrow and I'm like, oh, okay, I felt this, then you're kind of just guessing. And I don't have a tournament tomorrow. I don't really have a tournament lined up for, a few more weeks. So we're really trying to get everything dialed in by the time that rolls around. So it's tough, man. It's tough to really answer these questions, and that's kind of what we're fighting. But nonetheless, I think we're in a good spot. I think that we're in the ballpark. At some point, let's say you're taking a test, right? And, you got 10 answers to a question. Well, we feel like we've eliminated maybe 7 of the answers. So we don't know exactly which one of the 3 is the right one, but we're in the ballpark. We're close. And I think at the end of the day, to an extent, that is all you can truly ask for. We're getting a little bit closer. We've got some fun stuff to mess with over the next few days, next few weeks, which I'm excited about. And we'll get into that, in the next couple of videos, like the mini driver eyes. But yeah, that's kind of the conclusion we've got for today. I think we're in a good spot. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.